With a supposed 2-week ceasefire between the US and Iran already falling apart, and the US now blockading the Strait of Hormuz, talk has turned back to the global oil and gas shortage. Ships remain stuck in the Persian Gulf. The last tankers to leave the strait before the war are now reaching their destinations, and a number of governments, mostly in Asia, have already introduced measures like cuts to fuel duties or limits on commuting to reduce energy usage and support vulnerable consumers. If nothing gives, shortages are expected in the US and Europe sometime next month. And last week, the head of the International Energy Agency, or IEA, Fatih Birol, told the French newspaper Le Figaro that the energy shock triggered by the Iran war is worse than all previous oil crises combined, calling it more serious than the ones in 1973, 1979, and 2002 together. Nonetheless, so far the market reaction has been remarkably muted. Oil prices are down from their mid-war peaks, and in the past couple of days, global stock markets have rebounded with gusto, with both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq Composite reaching new all-time closing highs on Wednesday. So, in this video, we're going to try to explain this apparent incongruence between the material world and the markets, and explain why, to us at least, the markets look a bit too optimistic. If you love staying informed and want some of the best reporting on YouTube, then subscribe and ring the bell for more. Now, as you'll know by now, Iran has responded to the US-Israeli war by effectively closing the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway through which about 20% of the world's oil supplies pass in normal times, by striking tankers and laying mines, forcing up insurance costs and making it extremely dangerous for ships to transit. With the strait closed, average daily shipping flows declined by 94%, leading to a significant drop in oil exports from the Middle East. According to Bloomberg, fuel oil exports fell by 88% between February and March, jet fuel by 85%, naphtha by 73%, liquefied petroleum gas by 65%, and diesel by 55%. As such, Asia is currently serving as the test case for this energy supply shortage. Asian governments have introduced new policies like 4-day work weeks and limits on air conditioning to reduce energy use. To make matters worse, China has reportedly banned the export of petrol, diesel and jet fuel, prompting the head of the IEA to warn countries not to hoard oil and fuel supplies, saying that, quote, countries in Asia who hold major refineries should rethink any ban on energy exports. Meanwhile, Europe is also preparing for physical shortages within the coming weeks. Germany's introduced a daily cap on diesel price hikes. Ireland, Italy, Spain, Albania and Croatia have cut fuel duties. And 5 EU countries, Austria, Germany, Italy, Portugal and Spain, wrote a letter to Brussels earlier this month urging it to impose a windfall tax on energy companies to, quote, alleviate the burden on the general public. Nonetheless, despite widespread shortages, evident anxiety amongst policymakers and the pertinent fact that the strait has not reopened, as we mentioned in the intro, so far the market reaction has been surprisingly muted, if not outright optimistic. So, what explains this apparent incongruence? Why are the markets apparently so unbothered by this unprecedented energy crisis? Well, it's in part because the global economy has proved remarkably resilient. On the supply side, Gulf producers have been able to find alternative export routes. Saudi Arabia has lent more heavily on its port at Yanbu, the UAE on Fujairah, and Iraq on pipeline exports to Turkey, although this has offset less than 20% of the total Hormuz-related shortfall. On the demand side, Asian countries have been able to rapidly curtail oil consumption, both via policy and by leaning more on different energy sources. In practice, this has mainly involved restarting coal plants, but India, for instance, is speeding up clearances for new wind power plants and battery storage systems, while Japan and South Korea are accelerating their pivots towards nuclear power. More generally, the global economy is just less reliant on oil and gas than it used to be, as evidenced by the global decline of so-called oil intensity, which basically measures how much oil is required to produce a unit of GDP. But the main reason that markets are so optimistic is that, in short, they apparently expect the US and Iran to come to an agreement sometime soon that would involve reopening the strait. This is why stocks jumped and oil slumped once Trump announced the ceasefire, and why we've seen some divergence between the near-term futures contracts for Brent crude, which is basically the price you pay to buy oil for delivery next month, and is the price that people usually cite when they're talking about oil prices, and the actual spot price, which is the price that refineries are paying to have oil delivered right now. These two are usually roughly the same, because in normal times oil costs about as much now as it does in a month's time, but have recently diverged. As of Wednesday, futures contracts are trading at less than $100 a barrel, while the spot market is trading at over $140. This divergence reflects the fact that, while the physical market is indeed very tight right now, markets apparently believe that things will be a lot better as soon as next month, presumably because they expect there to be a peace deal by then. This apparent optimism would also explain why the stock market is booming, because markets expect the global economy to return to normal in short order. Nonetheless, this feels somewhat optimistic. For starters, even if the Strait were reopened immediately, it would still take a few months for ship traffic to return to normal, and longer for Gulf energy production to recover. Nearly a fifth of Qatar's total LNG export capacity has been destroyed by Iranian attacks, and damage to the 40 energy assets struck by Iran in the Persian Gulf will take several years to repair. But perhaps more significantly, for all of Trump's rhetorical optimism, it's hard to see a deal emerging anytime soon. There's still an enormous gap between the two sides' negotiating positions, and a debilitating lack of trust, which will have been exacerbated by Trump's recent escalation via a new blockade of the Strait. Polymarket, for instance, currently puts the odds of the Strait properly reopening by May at 24%, down from about 50% when the ceasefire was first announced. If the Strait remains closed, shortages will start to bite really quite soon. According to the Financial Times, for instance, the final tankers that left the Strait before the war began on the 28th of February are set to reach their destinations in the next week or so. If this does happen, major economies around the world are not well equipped for another energy crisis. Sovereign debt levels are at an all-time high. Governments are still recovering from the economic impacts of the pandemic and Russia's 2022 full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And there's limited spare capacity in global and national oil reserves, which leaves national governments with worryingly limited shock absorbers. Now, with stories like these filling the headlines, it's easy to be swept up in huge geopolitical and national security issues, and you might find yourself neglecting your own personal security. Your email is often overlooked when it comes to security, as you might think a couple of spam emails can't possibly be that harmful. But did you ever think about why your inbox is suddenly full of emails you don't want? That's because those big tech companies that are responsible for your emails aren't built to protect your inbox. They're built to sell your data. Thankfully, Proton Mail has your back. That's because Proton Mail offers one of the few genuine tools that protects users' personal information from being monetized or misused by those tech giants. They encrypt your emails, prevent surveillance from bad actors, and give you back control over your own communications. Proton has even made it so easy for you to switch from your old cluttered email with a tool that will make this possible to achieve in just a few clicks. Or you can just start fresh with a new email account and a clean mailbox from the beginning. But that's not all. They also offer a unique generational reset for you and your family. In today's society, even those born with complete anonymity can only stay private for so long. Children are now funneled into major tech ecosystems through school tools and apps that require specific accounts. And as soon as a child opens up a basic email account, their basic privacy is compromised, and big tech will instantly start to build an advertising profile without them even knowing. Thankfully, Proton Mail's Born Private campaign has an answer to that exact problem, as it offers you the opportunity to easily reserve an account for your child. You have the opportunity to protect their digital identity before profiling and tracking starts. So, if you want to take back your own privacy or protect the future privacy of your family, start using Proton Mail for free using our link at proton.me/bp/TLDR. And you'll be one step closer to a fully protected online experience free of data exploitation.